Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months.
Yoda Bolt fam, it's the director, Chargers fans. You guys ready to talk about some primetime Chargers football coming up this Monday? Chargers versus Dallas Cowboys, which is just sprinkled and littered with narratives from the top of the crop with, a former offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, coming in to get a swing at his former team, to some of the other things in terms of like receivers, the return of Austin Eckler, maybe the breakout of Quentin Johnson. What's going on with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys? Can the Chargers keep them in this phase or in this version of themselves that we saw versus the San Francisco 49ers this last week? There's a lot to talk about, baby, and I think it's going to be a very fun one. I think since the Justin Herbert era began, primetime football has become a very fun watch for Chargers fans, and we're hoping to see another outing like that this upcoming Monday. So we're going to talk about our game preview, Chargers versus Cowboys, Kellen Moore and his impact, etc., etc. Now, before we do kick off, guys, let's check out our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, here real quick, man. We've been harping about this all season, all off season. The very best fantasy platform on the web. Certainly, if you guys haven't even tried it out yet, please take the time. Use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100 and enjoy football season the way it's meant to be enjoyed with fantasy football. And this just so happens to be my personal favorite platform on the web. And for you newcomers, definitely take advantage of these little deals, man, that we're putting on the videos. These are awesome. These are called, half-yard specials or specials for new entries or new people coming into the fold, new customers. And this week for I think it's going to be the morning slate here, Joe Burrow, half a yard for tomorrow. If you guys want to get in on it, use that very, very soon before it expires. Again, code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. Now, before we do kick off, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time. You guys take the like, sub, bell notification. Helps me out a lot. Let's jump into it, baby. Lights, camera, action. Your Chargers versus Cowboys game preview. We'll call this one Moore's Revenge. I like that quite a bit, man. Before we do jump into all of the talking points, first off, we got to go through this laundry list of an injury report for both sides here, because I do think it's going to be very, very important. Now, at the time of recording, we only have the injury report up until Friday, okay? Saturday, I think, is going to be very telling, so you guys make sure to check us out on X or on Twitter, on those social media platforms for any updates there. It should be very interesting to see how this game unfolds with how many players could or could not be playing that week. Okay, so at the very top here, Joey Bosa has not been practicing. I do hope that's just more of a precautionary thing, because Joey Bosa in this game would be significant. I'm going to say that right now. Joey Bosa versus Dak Prescott, especially the version that we saw last week versus the Niners, he'd make a pretty big impact. So that's one to definitely monitor very closely as we get more information. A big name right here, though, man. Austin Eckler should be making his return on Monday. That is very significant. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Other big impact players, of course, you got Justin Herbert with the left finger. He should be fine. There's been a lot of talk as to like, oh my God, is this really going to hinder his performance or his ability to perform? I think what I heard, even the day that he got injured, that if he were to come into that week with that specific injury, he would have played. Does that make sense? So basically, this is a very minor injury. It is something that the Chargers need to monitor, though. We were really hoping that it doesn't affect his play too much. Alohi Gilman, still sidelined with a heel injury. The Chargers may need to get creative again at safety. We saw some pretty nice guys fill in last time. I think it was Dean Marlowe, who looked pretty nice. And then, of course, I think it was Raheem Lane that came in as well. Those guys actually didn't look too bad. So hopefully the Chargers can call upon one of them again. Speaking of safeties, the return of Derwin James. We'll talk more about that later in the video, but that's certainly very, very significant. Cornerback Dean Leonard has not been practicing with a hamstring injury. Chargers may need to elevate a corner to help that situation out. Donald Parham is back in full practice, which is nice to have that red zone target back. Trey Pipkins is getting full practices in. Rashawn Slater getting full practices in. And then Nick Williams, a recent signing by the Chargers, did not practice this week. So laundry list for the Chargers. Let's take a look at the Cowboys, man. If you guys thought ours was bad, look at this, dude. Look how many names. We're not even going to go through all of them. I'm just going to go through the ones that I think have a chance at missing. So anything limited practice or worse. So Damon Clark, linebacker, he might miss this game. You've got CJ Goodwin, corner for that team. He's probably not going to play. Jonathan Hankins, I happen to know he's a pretty decent defensive tackle. He might not play. He actually probably will not play. Malik Hooker, if he does miss, but he's got a full practice. And Tony Pollard, he had a limited practice. He should be able to play. Who else right here? Thomas, their other safety, might not play. Leighton Vander Esch, linebacker, might not play. And then Edoga, do not practice here, might not play. So a laundry list of injuries for both players, or both teams, I should say. Something to monitor as we go in, because it's so many names at this point that if more or less players play, especially these star players like, Justin Herbert and, Derwin James, these kind of guys, like if we have any issues with those, that's certainly going to swing things for either side. So keep that in mind as we go into Monday. All right. So let's jump into our first talking point here. The Chargers hosting the Dallas Cowboys, who are coming off a disastrous game versus the San Francisco 49ers. One of the biggest headlines I think you're going to see this week, not just from me or the other Chargers fans, but it's going to be all over the web with NFL fans, is going to be Kellen Moore's revenge game. Okay, Kellen Moore, for whatever reason that the Cowboys could justify it, and that fan base and that, the front office or whatever, they let go of one of the best offensive minds in football, hoping that the grass would be greener with the McCarthy experiment. And unfortunately for them, that has not been working out. For the Chargers, however, this is going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. So again, the Cowboys, their offense has fallen just so tremendously since Moore's exit. I think they're now a bottom half football team in terms of their offense. Meanwhile, Kellen Moore has vaulted the Chargers to a top 5 offense in the league, which is pretty insane. So it's time to flex if you're Kellen Moore. Hey man, you guys were definitely off when making that decision of letting them move on from Kellen Moore. In this particular week, I think we should see that secret sauce, right, added to the offense. A couple of plays that were specifically designed to sort of stick it to his former team. And I think I'm expecting some fun and creativity in this week as well, especially with Austin Eckler back in the mix. You got the receivers that need to step up, and Quentin Johnston, maybe Darius Davis. If there was ever a week I'd expect us to pour it on, I think it's this week, baby. Put your foot on the gas. One of the biggest things I think McCarthy said in terms of wanting to move on from Kellen Moore was a lack of clock management or something, chewing the clock at the end of the game. He didn't like stacking the scoreboard or something like that, which I thought was ridiculous. He wanted to get in and get out. And so far, that philosophy, I think pretty evidently, is not working out for the Cowboys. Meanwhile, the Chargers, we haven't seen a ton of that lately this season, but I'm hoping to see it, especially this week, to kind of stick that philosophy back to his former team. Speaking of the Cowboys, Dak and the Cowboys had a pretty spectacular implosion this last week. I'm sure a lot of us witnessed that. And a lot of us were like, hey, man, we want to see more of this, right? The Dak and the Cowboys, they're coming off their worst game in a very, very long time versus the Niners, falling to the Niners 10-42 in a spectacular collapse. That was a spectacular implosion. I am a little worried, though. I'm going to say this just to kind of give, a benefit to both sides here. I am a little bit worried that the Cowboys coming into town, they're seeing red a little bit after that, right? Not just because they face the Niners, but because, man, that was humiliating. They want to bounce back week. And I think I even saw Derwin James mention something like that. Like, those guys are going to be mad. They're going to be pissed. We got to make sure to, punch them in the mouth before they can gain any momentum, right? And I feel like, again, yes, we want to, hope that they're not coming in here with that, big fire in their bellies to come out and disprove last week. But on the other hand, this could be the beginning of an off-the-rails season for Dallas, okay? The Chargers do need to be ready for them, but we also need to bury them if they provide an opening, okay? And I'll get more into the off-the-rails things here in just a second. I think it's very evident. If you guys go take a look at the Cowboys season so far, it's very evident that this could be the beginning of the end for America's team, okay? But first, fear is the path to the Dak side. Right? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm a big Star Wars nerd. One thing I hope the Chargers can capitalize on this week is going to be Dak's recent passer anxiety. I don't know, man. I feel like Dak is a decent quarterback. I've always said that, right? But this year in particular, whether it be because of the new offensive system or whatever, things have been a little bit off, especially last week. Last week, Dak was sacked 3 times, right? Which is 3 times too many for any football team. But this also, in my opinion, helped produce 3 interceptions. And that is something I think the Chargers can help replicate. That's a recipe for disaster that I think the Chargers were built to whip up. All right? Dak, meet Mac, Bosa, and Thule. First off, the Chargers are really shaping into a threatening edge team this season. I think the drafting of Thule Tuipulotu was a smash hit, a slam dunk, and it's really paying off early in his career. You got to talk about, Khalil Mack coming off a career game with 6 sacks versus Vegas. I think he's just turned it back up to 100, right? I think that's back on track. The Chargers, we could be getting Joey Bosa back this week, who's a beast on his own, right? But even if we don't, again, we have Thule Tuipulotu, proven to be one hell of a rookie this season. The Cowboys, on the other hand, their passing protection, that's been more or less below average this year. So the Chargers should have no problem turning up the heat this week. And I think, again, that's a very important aspect to the Chargers' recipe for disaster for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. You force those, those errant throws. You force those, tough situations for a quarterback. You're going to see some mistakes. And that's something that we've seen the past couple of weeks with Dak Prescott, who's decent at taking care of the ball. But it's really tough to ask any quarterback to keep their composure with that kind of pass rush coming after him. And the Chargers just so happen to have 3, I would say, pretty premium players at that position. Now, what happens after that heat begins to become generated? Well, Dak, also, please meet Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr. and company. This is where the Chargers can really capitalize on game-swinging opportunities. I think Derwin James is well overdue for an interception at this point. The Chargers, I would say, have been pretty good at generating turnovers this season. A little bit less in the interceptions, more so on the forced fumbles. But the Chargers, again, recipe for disaster is already kind of brewing here in terms of the opposing offense. And I think the Chargers, in terms of generating interceptions, this is, again, the recipe that you're looking for. The pass rush is going to cause some havoc this week. It's going to cause maybe some errant throws, some anxiety from Dak Prescott, who has been kind of, scrambling around a little bit without a Kellen Moore. And we can see guys like Derwin and Asante capitalize on those opportunities, which is interesting. If you go back and you look at the Chargers past 3 games, they have had way more opportunities than their stat sheet would indicate in terms of interceptions. I think a lot of interceptions dropped by Asante, Mike Davis, and maybe even a couple by the linebackers. A lot of opportunities have been out there that haven't been capitalized on. I would assume that the Chargers, through the bye week, have put a pretty big emphasis on the DBs to hey, man, we got to get you out there and practice, right? Get on that jugs machine. We got to make sure that when the opportunity turns or presents itself, we come up with the interception. I think Derwin's overdue. I think Asante needs more. He's had a lot of opportunities. I think it's time to start capitalizing on that, because the Chargers, in order to get that premium pass rush to help the DBs out, is very tough. Not a lot of teams in the entire NFL have the pass rushing tandem of 3 premium edge position players, Mac, Bosa, and Thule. We need to make sure that the DBs are up to the task in forcing those turnovers via interception. Now, if the Chargers aren't producing interceptions, I think Bosa, Mack, and Thule may be able to force a fumble or 2 as well. They've been very good at that so far this season, especially versus the Vikings. But who isn't great versus the Vikings in forcing fumble so far this season? No, man. I just foresee in this game in particular, the offense being pretty dang good, but I think the defense has been kind of flying under the radar a little bit. And I think in terms of pass rush, we found a nice identity. It's time to start tying a bow on it and figuring out how to use that to our advantage in order to get the ball back in our possession more often than not. So I like it. I want to see that this week. Next up, last couple of things to talk about here. Prime time Herbert. On the other side, we've got Justin Herbert, the quarterback, right? Who's been on fire this season. 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, just 1 interception in 2023, which has been very, very impressive considering our schedule. Yes, he's coming off a minor finger injury, which we do need to monitor, but it's not that serious. He's also on a historically insane Monday Night Football track right now. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I saw it somewhere on Twitter or on X earlier today. He's thrown for just about 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns in his 4 career Monday Night Football games. He's 3-1, losing only to the Saints in a close game his rookie season. Herbert is just that primetime beast. And I do expect to see that on display this week. On the other side, you also have, to help Herbert's case, you have Dallas and that defense, which is missing Trevon Diggs. Man, have they looked different without Trevon Diggs, dude. Trevon really was kind of the heart and soul of that defensive backcourt, and since his exit, it's been pretty bad out there, man. Since then, they've been pretty poor versus the pass. allowing a monster game to just Brock Purdy last week. Brock Purdy! That offense is good, but I don't think it's because of Brock Purdy. And he had a great game. You also must consider that Herbert is far and away the best quarterback this team has faced so far. You guys remember earlier I said that this could be the beginning of an off-the-rails season for Dallas. This is what I was leading up to, man. The Cowboys are 3-2. Not a bad record, right? But this is after facing the likes of Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, Josh Dobbs, Mac Jones, and now Brock Purdy at quarterback. That is what they've had to deal with, man. Then enter a Justin Herbert, right? Things are going to get different. As a matter of fact, for the Cowboys next 3 weeks, they're about to face Herbert, Stafford, and Hurts back to back to back. It feels like it's all going to come crashing down starting this week because of the caliber of quarterback they're about to face off. And again, without some of their star power on defense. Yes, I'm still very worried about Micah Parsons. I think every team should be worried about Micah Parsons. Chargers got to find a way to protect Justin Herbert. But imagine what Justin Herbert's going to do after seeing the other quarterbacks put up the numbers they have been. Of course, Dallas was a little bit better early in the season when they had Trevon Diggs. But even last week, it's just a heavy indicator that Justin Herbert, the first premium quarterback that they're going up against, should be in a very good position to have a very nice outing. So I'm going to be predicting a very nice outing from Justin Herbert this week, especially as, you know, he's been a beast this season. He's starting to add scrambling to his tool belt. It's just all coming together. And with, you know, a Kellen Moore offense that's designed maybe to humiliate his previous team, it's just coming together for a very nice outing for Justin Herbert. All right. And not just Justin Herbert on the offense, but this week, man, we got a very, very big boost that we've needed for quite a while now. Welcome back, Eckler. A huge aspect to this game, as well as the fact that the Chargers will be getting their star running back, Austin Eckler, back. Okay, this is big. The Chargers' rushing game has been pretty bad since his injury earlier in the season. But with his return, I would expect a much, much healthier run game to help open up the pass game a little bit more. And not to mention, Austin Eckler and Justin Herbert, they've had this chemistry, this repertoire for a long, long time. He's going to help in the passing game a lot, too. This offense just all around feels so much better with number 30 on the field. I think fantasy football fans super excited to see him back. Chargers fans super excited to see him back. I think in terms of appreciating the player Austin Eckler, we needed to see him ball out the first week or two, right, before injury. We need to see what life was like without him, which has been pretty miserable if I'm being honest in terms of the run game, and then see what he provides coming back from that. I think after that, a lot of fans will be like, you know what? Maybe we let him squeak in a couple more years in his 30s as our running back because he's proving to be a very big part of this team. I think either way, the run game has become very evident how important it is, and Austin Eckler is our true running back one that we needed back on the field. All right? Now, the last case I want to make on this video, which is pretty important, Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston and the Chargers wide receiver core. More specifically, I'm going to call this one a QJ breakout game. Now, the Chargers receivers, I do think there's a one clear-cut guy that's going to dominate. He's going to have a very good game, and that's, of course, going to be Keenan Allen. I think Keenan, so long as he stays on the field, knock on wood, is going to be one of the most dangerous wide receivers in the league. But with Mike Williams now sidelined, he's going to need help. I think our first game without Mike out there, it was a little bit tougher for Keenan Allen. I think that's because he's drawing more coverage. We need to turn Quentin Johnston into that guy. He doesn't have to be, you know, Mike Williams. He can play his own game, but we need to give Keenan Allen some form of help right away. And I think this is the week that we see our first-round rookie step into that spotlight. The Chargers, they've struggled to get him involved the last, couple of games to start off the season. Our first game without Mike Williams, I feel like it was very evident that we need a guy like that the Chargers are missing a piece to this game, and it's really time to really thrust that Quentin Johnston into the game plan a little bit. And I think with some significant time behind us since then, right, that, week 5 bye couldn't have come at a better time. I think the Chargers have used this time to help wedge Quentin Johnston into the game plan more aggressively. I think that, honestly, if I were the Chargers and I was Kellen Moore, and I was looking at the rest of the season, this is our one bye, what do I want to accomplish? I think the biggest thing I would want to accomplish is getting Quentin Johnston thoroughly and aggressively inserted into this game plan. And I think we see it to start work this week. I really do. because Quentin Johnston's strengths, they've always been in the deep parts of the field. And if you watch his last few games, I think he has been open and available. I think Dan from Chargers Unleashed, he was posting a couple of photos of Quentin Johnston just butt naked, available and uncovered in the middle of the field that he just was not targeted on. I think with more practice and more synchronicity with Justin Herbert, we'll start to see those shots taken. But I'm betting that, again, over the course of the bye week, that has been a pretty big focus of this team. You're going to need Quentin Johnston going forward. And he's going to have to start producing. And I think it starts this week versus the Cowboys, who have a pretty below average passing defense at this point. So to wrap up this video, I'm going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and predict this game. I'm going to say it's going to be a pretty high scoring game. I don't think the Chargers and its fans escape the fourth quarter jitters, the fourth quarter anxiety. But I do think, given the narratives and given the talent and given the lead up to this game, I think the Chargers can win this one. I'm going to go Chargers 34, Cowboys 28. I think it'll be a high scoring game. I think the Chargers defense, again, they've been allowing a lot of points. Hopefully we can figure it out this week. But in terms of their offense, I do expect to see some nice numbers from primetime Justin Herbert, the return of Austin Eckler, and a revenge game for Kellen Moore. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you liked what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out, and hit us up in the comment section below what you think the score of this game is going to be. We'll catch you next time, and as always, bolt up and stay frosty. I do expect, I expect also a big game from both the rookies, not just Quentin Johnston, but Tuli Tuipulotu as well. Bolt up, baby.